Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Perfection Achieved, the show where we promote our online classes at the Bailiwick Academy, and at the same time this is where we share with you our most sought after, simple, easy to prepare recipes that are just to die for. I'm Chef Joey Prats, and in this episode we are doing a special caramel flan. Now, a lot of you have done your own versions of flan, and each country in this world have their own versions as well. The Mexicans and the Spanish have their own Latin flan, the French have their own creme caramel, and of course the Pinoys have the beloved leche flan. So this is my mom's special recipe, and I tweaked it a little bit because my students and followers have written me and they've expressed their desire for a flan recipe that is silky smooth, melt in the mouth, and just simply to die for. And this recipe will do the trick. Now, you need a pan where we are going to bake our flan. You can use either a loaf pan. This is a 22 centimeter by 11 centimeter loaf pan. This is 8.5 by 4.5 inches. You can also use a 9 by 5 inch loaf pan, or you can do a round flan using a round baking pan. 20 centimeters, that's 8 inches by 7.5 centimeters or 3 inches deep. Okay, or you can use the typical llaneras, which are available almost everywhere. So basically you can use any shape of pan, but I prefer the loaf pan because well, it looks unique, not the usual flan shape, and when you slice it, it makes it easier for slicing and serving. I'll show you later. But first, let's begin by making our caramel. Now, when you make caramel for flan, you can do it two ways. You can do a dry caramel, and I think most Pinoys Pinoy recipes for flan utilize that kind of a technique wherein you just put the sugar in your llanera or your pan, and then you put it over a flame, and then you shake the pan until it melts and turns into a caramel. But I prefer the second method, which is the wet caramel. So the wet caramel is better for beginners because there's less chance of you to burn the caramel. And for that, you'll need a saucepan. And into our saucepan, we're going to combine the caramel ingredients, which are your sugar. We're using castor sugar. The finer the granulation, the better, because it will dissolve faster. You have a little bit of still mineral water, which is simply drinking water, and some light corn syrup, or you can also use glucose. Okay, now before you turn on the heat, you must have with you on the side a bowl with some cold water and a pastry brush. Now I'm going to turn on my stove, and I'm going to set this on medium heat. Now, when you make wet caramel, you're also making what we call a super saturated sugar solution, which means in this recipe, there is more sugar than the water can dissolve. And the only way to dissolve the sugar is to apply heat. Now, basically what you're doing is converting solid sugar into liquid sugar. But this process, as simple as it is, can be tricky because if you're not careful, the sugar, solid sugar that turned into liquid sugar, can revert back into solid form. And this is called recrystallization. And that's something you don't want to happen, because if that happens, then discard everything and start from scratch. All right, now, before your mixture comes to a boil, you are allowed to stir the mixture just a little bit, just to moisten the sugar, okay? Remember, the sugar will not dissolve until this mixture comes to a boil. Now, once the sugar is completely moistened, stop stirring, because too much stirring, or what we call agitation, can recrystallize your mixture. Once the mixture comes to a boil, take your water, your cold water, and paste your brush. Brush the sides of your saucepan, and this will wash down any sugar crystals that is attached to the side of the saucepan. It will wash it down and dissolve those sugar crystals. Now, this is a very important step because if you don't do this, any whole sugar crystal that falls back into the pool of syrup that you are cooking can start a chain reaction and again recrystallize the whole mixture. So you want to avoid that. Now, one of the things that you can do to avoid this, aside from not agitating or mixing too much, and of course brushing the side of the saucepan with cold water, is to add what we call an invert sugar. And the glucose or the corn syrup that we added is an invert sugar. And that also helps to prevent the recrystallization of sugar. So as you can see, there are so many things that we can do to avoid recrystallization. Now, we're going to continue cooking this until your syrup turns into a nice amber-colored caramel. And as soon as that happens, we're going to pour that into our loaf pan here. So as you cook the syrup, you are allowed to swirl the saucepan from time to time just to promote even mixing of the syrup. Okay, so as you can see, the syrup is starting to color. So I'm going to swirl my saucepan around this way to promote even mixing of the syrup. And once I get a nice amber-colored syrup, then I'm going to pour that into my pan. We're almost there. A few more seconds. Okay, let me turn off my stove. Now, that's how I like it to be. That's how deep the color I want my caramel to have. See? Beautiful. Now I'm going to pour this now into my pan. Now, take a pot holder or a cloth, because this is going to be hot, and I want you to tilt your pan on all sides so that the caramel coats the bottom half of the pan on all sides. Okay? Okay, once you've done that, set your pan aside, and that will harden in a few minutes. No? So you let it harden first before you start mixing your flan mixture. Now, if you like your caramel to be lighter in color, then cook it less. If you want it darker, then cook it more. I want my caramel to have a nice deep color and at the same time, reach that borderline where there's just a touch of bitterness. That sweet and bitterness, coming together. For me, that's how I like my caramel. But of course, personal preference. All right, so as this cools, I'm going to mix my flan mixture, and right here we have our ingredients. Now, I'm using 3 kinds of milk here. I'm using condensed milk, evaporated milk, and I added some cream, some whipping cream, just to give it a little bit of lightness. Okay, so this is very easy to prepare. All you have to do is to combine all the ingredients in a bowl and whisk together gently. That's the key word here, gently, because we don't want to incorporate too much air bubbles. in our mixture because we want this to be just extremely silky smooth and no air cells inside. When you slice your flan, you should not see any air cells or bubbles. Okay? So this has to be extremely smooth. So I'm going to combine all my ingredients. So I've got my sweetened condensed milk. Now, as you can see, this recipe does not contain any sugar because condensed milk is about 40% sugar already. And I don't like my desserts to be extremely sweet. By the way, the recipe for this is in the description box below. So just look down there and you'll see it there. Okay, I have my sweetened condensed milk. I have some evaporated milk. Now this is classic. In most recipes for flan, you will see sweetened condensed milk and evaporated milk together. Now this is my own personal touch. Some whipping cream to lighten the mixture. A little bit of flavoring, vanilla extract. You feel free to put, some finely grated lemon zest or lime zest if you want, a touch of citrus to this. But I like this, classic, just vanilla extract. Now I have some egg yolks here. The classic flan recipe uses pure egg yolks, but I like to incorporate some whole eggs as well. The presence of egg whites produces a flan that is a little bit firmer with less likelihood of falling apart. It will still be melt in the mouth, it will still be silky smooth, but it will have that firmness that we will need since our flan will be a little bit on the tall side. So I have some whole eggs. And all we have to do now is to whisk this well. Now just gently, don't do this too briskly. Okay, so I'm making sure to break the yolks. Now, everybody loves flan. I have not met a single soul in my life who has told me that they don't like flan. Everybody likes flan. And flan is a very versatile dessert. You can eat it on its own. The Mexicans serve this during weddings. They serve this with the Mexican tea cookies. And it's wonderful with the crunch of the Mexican tea cookies. And of course, it can be a very essential ingredient for a Pinoy dessert called halo-halo, along with some ube halaya, which, by the way, I have an online class for ube jam at the Bailiwick Academy. So the link to my page at the Bailiwick Academy is in the description box as well. Click that link to take you to the page, and you can see over 30 online classes for you to enjoy. Now, once this mixture is nicely blended and you can see it's nice and smooth, the trick to getting that super silky, no air bubble kind of flan is to, first of all, sieve it or strain the mixture. And we're going to do that here. And this gets rid of some egg whites maybe that was not incorporated well. Let me just scrape this. This is a very important step in the process. And this is something that I learned from my mom, who makes the most delicious flans ever. So as you can see here, you've got some solid particles, some yolks, some egg whites, and this is the thing we want to get rid of. And also the straining process eliminates air bubbles that may have formed in the mixture because of the whisking of the mixture. Now, one of the techniques I learned from my mom is to let this stand for at least 30 minutes before you pour it into your caramel-lined pan. And that also settles the mixture, and if there are any air bubbles trapped within the custard, then that also gets rid of them. Okay, so we let this stand for 30 minutes. You can refrigerate it if it's warm, because you don't want this to be lying in a warm ambient temperature, because there's a presence of eggs and dairy products. Those are what we call potentially hazardous food ingredients in the food industry. So after 30 minutes, we're going to pour it into our pan. So don't go away, we will be back shortly. Okay, it's been 30 minutes. As you can see, the caramel has hardened. Now it's time for us to transfer our flan mixture into our pan. Now, as you can see, I placed my loaf pan containing the caramel into a bigger pan, because we're going to bake this in a what we call a water bath or a bain-marie. So I'm going to now pour my custard into the pan. Now, don't worry, I know this fills up the pan almost to the brim, but this flan does not rise in the oven, so it won't overflow. Now, if you're a little bit worried, then you can use a bigger pan. I'm using an 8.5 by 4.5 inch loaf pan. This is about 2.5 inches deep. So if you're worried that it will overflow, which I'm guaranteeing it won't, you can use a bigger loaf pan. You can use a 9-inch by 5-inch loaf pan, which is about 2.5 inches deep as well. Or as I mentioned earlier, a 20 centimeter or 8-inch round cake pan, which is 3 inches or 7.5 centimeters deep. Now, I'm going to take this setup in the oven, and once there, I'm going to fill the bigger pan with some hot water or boiling water, and the boiling water should come about halfway your smaller pan. So it should be about 3.5 or 4 centimeters or about 1.5 inches deep. Okay, so you need that much water so that your flan will bake evenly and will bake come out nice and smooth after. Now, another technique, another secret to a flan that is silky smooth with no air bubbles inside is the temperature of your oven. So avoid extremely high temperatures. We want to go low temperature here with a longer baking time. So I have preheated my oven to 165 degrees Celsius, okay? And we're going to bake this for about 1 hour 40 to 1 hour 50 minutes. Okay, now how do you know that your flan is baked? A lot of recipes will, say jiggle the pan, it should jiggle slightly in the center, but that is so not accurate. So to be more accurate, you need a good thermometer. So for your thermometer, this is the thermometer that I recommend. This is the gold standard when it comes to instant read digital thermometers. This is used by professionals around the world. This is what you call the Thermapen Mark IV thermometer, and you can get this at the ThermoWorks website, and I'll put a link to that below as well. So you can order this there. This is about $100 plus shipping and taxes, okay? So you must have this. This is a must-have if you want to turn out great desserts as well as great cuisine in your kitchen, because everything is about accuracy. All right, so this goes into my 165 degrees Celsius oven for 1 hour and 40 minutes, more or less. All right, or until, I almost forgot to mention, the way you know that your flan is done is you have to take the internal temperature. So stick your thermometer in the center of your flan it should read 80 degrees Celsius. Once it reaches 80 degrees Celsius, your flan is done. Get it out of the oven, okay? Because if it goes beyond 85 degrees Celsius, then that's the time you encounter problems with texture. That's the time you get air bubbles inside because the egg proteins expand and it creates those bubbles. So you want to bake this only until your flan is 80 degrees in the center Celsius. Okay? So when we come back, I'm going to show you how to unmold the flan and how to serve it. Okay? Oh, by the way, in our past videos, one of the most common comments that we get is what brand of scale do we use? Because apparently that caught the eyes of a lot of you. So I am using the OXO 22-pound digital scale, which you can get from Amazon. And this is about $70 or so plus shipping and taxes. Okay, so that's where you can get this. And I'll leave a link also in the description box for this item. All right? So we'll be back shortly. Don't go away. In the meantime, here is a teaser trailer of one of my upcoming online classes at the Bailiwick Academy. So please watch this. In this class, I will teach you how to make the best ever ubi jam with a creamy, smooth consistency and a rich, intense flavor that's not too sweet. So join me as we explore this wonderful and fabulous Filipino recipe. All right, so welcome back. So if you enjoyed that teaser trailer that we just showed you, you can click the link to my page at the Bailiwick Academy. Head on over to the website and you can see over 30 online classes that I have there that you can enjoy, and enroll in. Anyway, so here we have our baked flan. Now, once your flan hits 80 degrees Celsius in the center, remove it from the oven and then cool it to room temperature. Once it cools down, wrap the entire pan, remove it from the bigger pan, the water bath, and then cover the loaf pan containing the flan with cling wrap and then refrigerate it overnight. So that should firm up the flan. Never unmold your flan on the same day it's baked. It has to firm up first so that when you flip it over, it doesn't fall apart. So here's our flan, which has been in the fridge for the last 12 hours or so. So the first thing that you do is to use a table knife and loosen the sides. So loosen the sides. Okay. And then place your serving platter on top of the pan and in one swift motion, flip. Try to center the pan and then lift. Now, as you will notice, you still got a thick layer of caramel inside your pan. What you can do here is place your pan on top of an open flame, just medium heat, and swirl this pan around until the caramel melts, and then we can pour that over our flan to get more caramel out of this. Okay, so when we come back, let me just clear up first. When we come back, I'm going to show you a cross section of our flan, and of course we're going to taste the flan. So don't go away. Okay, so welcome back. Here we have it, caramel flan, perfection achieved. Now I'm going to enjoy a slice of my flan along with a cup of Earl Grey tea as always. And if you can see here, I hope you can get a close-up of this. You can see how nice and smooth and silky the texture is. And as they say, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. Wow. It says it all. The ultimate flan recipe. Now this recipe is for keeps. I hope you enjoyed this episode of our show, Perfection Achieved. I'm Chef Joey Prats. I will see you again next time.